The Clone Wars Death Trap. The Jedi cruiser Endurance was preparing to meet a Republic frigate. The frigate was carrying a class of clone cadets who were eager to explore the warship. Just before the frigate docked, the clone sergeant addressed the boys. "You have the best training in the galaxy, but no one can train you for the moment you look death in the eyes," he said. "What you do then, and the soldier you become, that is up to you." He dismissed them, and the clone cadets relaxed. Two of them, Whiplash and Hotshot, noticed a new boy standing by himself. He looked somehow different, which was weird. All the clones looked alike. That was the point. "Who's the new guy with the long hair?" asked Hotshot. "Some last-minute replacement," said Whiplash. "Hey, what outfit you from?" The new boy replied quietly. 322nd. "I heard they had their tour," said Hotshot. "They did," the boy replied. "I couldn't make it. Broken arm." Hotshot sneered. A real trooper could lose an arm and still report for duty. "So what are you, soft?" Whiplash asked. Another cadet, Jax, noticed what was happening. "What's going on here, gentlemen?" he asked. "Just having a little fun," said Hotshot. "Oh, I've seen your kind of fun, Hotshot," Jax remarked. "Stand down." Hotshot and his friends left, and Jax smiled at the new arrival. "Hi, what's your name?" "I'm Lucky," said the boy. "Thanks, but I can handle myself." "Yeah, sure," said Jax, "but a trooper's only as strong as the trooper beside him. We're all in this together, right?" Lucky gave a small smile. "Right." The frigate docked with the cruiser, and the cadets disembarked in neat military rows. A row of clone troopers was waiting to greet them. Almost all the cadets stared eagerly at their older counterparts. Only Lucky turned his eyes away, as if he could not bear to look. "Don't be nervous," said Jax. "Only thing between us and them is experience. It's not like they're Jedi." At that moment, the doors whooshed open, and two Jedi strode in, Anakin Skywalker and Mace Windu. "Welcome aboard the Jedi cruiser Endurance," said Mace. "I am Mace Windu, and this is Anakin Skywalker. Welcome aboard," said Anakin. "Today you'll see how a real working Jedi cruiser operates, and you'll have the chance to serve right alongside two Jedi Knights." But as the cadets chattered excitedly, the Jedi were called away to a meeting in the war room. Lucky watched them go with a fierce intensity. The cadets were taken to the gunnery bay, where they met the commanding officer of the Endurance, Admiral Killian. He gave them target practice, blasting mechanical skeet out of the sky. Jax was the first to try, but he missed the little skeet completely. "Not even close," said Gunnery Sergeant Fury. "Next!" Whiplash was shoved into the cannon seat. He fired but could not hit the skeet. "Near miss is still a miss, kid," said Fury. Lucky was the next to sit down. He instantly settled into position, took aim, and fired. The skeet ball was blasted into a fireball. The cadets whooped and cheered. "I see why they call you Lucky," said Fury. "Well, let's see how you are when the Seppies come at you in tri-attack formation." He unleashed 3 skeet. Lucky raised up the seat of the cannon and fired. All the shots hit their mark. "Now that's a cadet to watch," said Admiral Killian. The cadets were taken deeper into the ship. Lucky was the last in line, and as the others marched away, he broke off of the group and tapped a comlink. "Channel 7 open, ready to receive Code 5 transmission," he said. "Boba, is that you?" asked a voice at once. "It is," said Lucky. The Admiral had been right. This was no ordinary cadet. Boba Fett was a clone, but he had been raised like a son by the original of all the clones, Jango Fett. Boba paused as he received the transmission, coordinates that would lead him to Mace Windu's quarters. Then he set off through the ship. When he arrived at Mace Windu's quarters, Boba attached an explosive device to the doorframe and activated a laser tripwire. Then he rejoined the other cadets, who didn't even realize he had been gone. Mace Windu was about to enter his quarters when he was asked to return to the bridge. He asked a clone trooper to put a data disk inside his quarters. and the unlucky clone trooper stepped up to the automatic doors. His body flew backwards and alarms rang out around the ship. In one of the corridors, the cadets stared as clone troopers raced past. "This doesn't look like a drill," said Jax to Boba. "No time for chatter," said their sergeant. "There's been an explosion. Our job's to get to the nearest safe room and let these troops do their job. Now move!" The Clone Youth Brigade started moving as a clone trooper rushed up to the sergeant and reported. "Ship's undamaged. 1 man down," he said. "General Windu's quarters got hit, but he survived." "Survived?" muttered Boba Fett in disappointment. He slipped away from the group as they marched steadily on. Mace Windu could tell this was no accident. Knowing the ship's navigation was located close to his quarters, Mace made contact with Admiral Killian on his comlink. "Admiral, has the navigation been damaged?" he asked. "Hobbled, not destroyed," replied the Admiral's voice. "Systems are repairable. I've ordered shutdown of all engines until we're fully operational. We'll hold orbit over Vancor." Anakin looked at Mace with concern in his eyes. "If navigation wasn't the target, then hitting your quarters was intentional," he said. Anakin and Mace gave orders to search the ship for the assassin. Meanwhile, Boba had made contact with his accomplice. "It's a miss. Repeat, miss," he reported. "What should I do?" "Head to the reactor. Blow the core," came the instruction. "But the crew," said Boba in an uncertain voice. "It isn't about them, just Mace." "If you want Windu dead, do as I say," snapped his accomplice. Boba entered the main reactor room and came face to face with a clone trooper. It was still hard for him to look at them. They were exact copies of his father, who Mace Windu had beheaded at the start of the Clone Wars. Boba missed his father with an aching, gnawing pain that never seemed to go away. Boba told the clone trooper that he was lost. As the trooper turned away to request an escort for the cadet, Boba took his blaster and hit him on the head. The blow glanced off the trooper's helmet. "What?" exclaimed the trooper. Boba hit him again, knocking his helmet off. "What are you doing?" cried the trooper. "We're brothers, don't shoot!" "You're not my brother," said Boba. He shot the trooper with a stun blast. Then he blasted the reactor's control panel and fired on the reactors. A massive rumbling explosion tore through the corridors of the cruiser. It lurched in space, fire spilling from its shattered hull. Troops were blown out a gaping hole in the side of the ship. The Endurance was slowly being pulled towards Vancor. They had to evacuate. Admiral Killian saw the cadets and spoke to them kindly. "More action than you signed on for, eh, boys?" he asked. "We're headed for the safe room now, sir," said the sergeant. "Fine, fine," said the Admiral, not wanting to frighten the boys. "Although, on second thought, let's make a drill of it. Head for the pods." The cadets looked at each other in concern. "The escape pods, sir?" asked the sergeant. "I want to see what they're made of," said the Admiral. "I'll even time you. It'll all make a fine story when you return to your base." Boba was running through the ship when a hand reached out and grabbed him. It was the clone sergeant. "Lucky, stay with the group," he ordered. "Yes, sir," said Boba, rejoining the other cadets. "How are we going to get through this?" asked Whiplash. "Groups of 4, men," the sergeant ordered. "Take pods 1 and 2. Set rendezvous coordinates with the other pods at a safe distance from the cruiser." He ushered the cadets to a row of escape pods and they climbed in. One by one, the escape pods were jettisoned into space. Boba found himself sharing a pod with Jax, Hotshot, and Whiplash. As soon as he could do it without being seen, he sabotaged the air brakes. Jax desperately tried to steer as the pod spun out of control. "The pod's malfunctioned!" he cried. "We missed the rendezvous!" exclaimed Hotshot as they passed the other escape pods. "I can't stop it!" Jax yelled. Anakin and Mace returned to the bridge of the ship. "The main reactor's beyond hope," said Anakin. "You have to abandon ship." "No," said the Admiral unexpectedly. "You must abandon ship. I'm staying." Anakin and Mace exchanged a look. They had not realized that Killian had such traditional ideas. "Admiral, you must abandon ship," said Mace. "Not a chance," the Admiral replied. "But sir," said Anakin, "with respect, that's an order." Killian did not move. "It may be your command, General, but we don't have time for that kind of sentiment," Anakin erupted. "It's not sentiment," said Killian. "An admiral must go down with his ship. I don't expect you to understand it, Jedi." The Jedi could not make him change his mind. Several of his men also wanted to stay behind. Anakin and Mace had to leave without them. The Jedi climbed into their ships to leave the cruiser, together with R2-D2 and the clone troops. Once they were outside, they turned to look at the situation. The fiery hulk of the cruiser was below them, battered and broken. The ship was descending towards the planet Vancor. "Admiral, what's your status?" asked Anakin over the comlink. "We're caught in Vancor's gravitational pull," Killian replied. "We're going to try and set her down on the surface." "All right," said Anakin. "Once you're down, we'll get the rescue team to your location." He was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the clone sergeant. "General Skywalker, this is Sergeant Crasher." "Yes, Sergeant?" asked Anakin. "It's the cadets, sir," Crasher said. "I can't raise them on any channel, and their locator beacon's not active. Theirs is the only pod unaccounted for." Mace was listening intently. "Sounds like our saboteur may have got to the cadets," he mused. "We'll have to find that pod," said Anakin. Anakin and Mace streaked off into deep space in their fighters. The missing pod had finally slowed down and was now sitting in empty space, unable to move. They had no navigation, no fuel feed, and no steering. What do we do?" Hotshot asked. "Our jobs," said Jax grimly. Suddenly, a shadow passed over the pod. "What was that?" asked Hotshot. "I don't know," said Jax. "A ship, I think." They exchanged nervous glances. "Rescue ship?" asked Whiplash. "It's too early," said Jax. The pod door opened, revealing a woman with chalk-white skin in a red jumpsuit. She was Aura Singh, a notorious bounty hunter. The reptilian brute behind her was Bosk. "Well, what do we have here?" asked Aura. "You boys look lost. Congratulations, Boba. Job well done." "His name's not Boba," said Jax. "He's Lucky." "Lucky?" Aura repeated with a laugh. "That's a good one." Jax looked at Boba and read the look on his face. "You're with her?" he asked in horror. "I wasn't expecting you to bring friends along," Aura went on. "I couldn't help it, Aura," Boba replied. "What are you going to do with them?" "What do you think?" said Aura. "Let them go?" asked Boba hopefully. "They're living witnesses, honey," said Aura. "That was never part of the plan," Boba cried. "I just wanted to kill the Jedi that murdered my father." "Well, that will have to wait," said Aura. "Grow up. You'll get your revenge in time. Now get on board. We have to get out of here. Or you can go with your friends who I'm going to jettison into the unknown. That would be poetic." Boba looked at the other cadets. "I'm sorry," he said. He climbed out of the pod. Jack stared at him in hurt and disbelief. "Traitor," he said. "Do it," purred Aura in Boba's ear. Boba sealed the cadets in. "You'll regret this," Jax yelled. The hatch closed and the pod slowly floated away. The cadets worked frantically on the pod controls. "I can't believe it," Hotshot muttered. "A traitor. He was a traitor." "We can't worry about that right now," said Jax. "We have to find a way to contact somebody." "We already tried," Hotshot exclaimed. "This pod is dead. We only have minimal life support." "Well, whose fault is that?" Whiplash added, glaring at Jax. "None of us. That guy you defended left us for dead." "Stow it, Whiplash," said Jax. "We need to work together." But Whiplash was working himself up into a fury. "You're not in charge here," he shouted. For a moment it looked as if he might hit Jax, but then a bright light entered the pod, blinding them. "They've come back to finish us off," Hotshot wailed. "No," cried Jax, looking out of the window. "It's the Jedi!" Outside, Mace and Anakin's Jedi starfighters were floating near the pod. The cadet knew that they were going to be all right. Anakin made contact with Sergeant Crasher. "I found your missing cadets, Crasher," he said. "Nice work," said Crasher. "How are they?" "I can't raise them on the comm channel," said Anakin. "Their pod must have been damaged in the evacuation. Head to point 038 and you can pick them up." The cadets watched the Jedi fly off, knowing that help would soon be arriving. "Jax, I'm sorry I lost my head," said Whiplash. "I didn't—" "It's okay," replied Jax. "I understand. I can't believe it was one of us," said Hotshot. "Someone just like us." "He's nothing like us," snarled Whiplash. "Let's hope he is," said Jax wisely. "If he is like us, he'll realize he's wrong." Meanwhile, the Jedi were speeding back towards Vancor. They had lost contact with Admiral Killian, and they had to find out what happened to the doomed Endurance. To be continued.